I know that I had to be different, and I was trying so hard in the beginning to try to look the part. Of course, I can't look like my counterparts, but I needed to find a way to do better. I had to be better than myself in order to even be considered. And here's what I mean. I had to cut my dreadlocks off, of course, so the dreadlocks are gone, get cleaned up, look clean as well, make sure that I was as well-spoken as possible, because there's always this stereotype of, oh, you speak well. And that's, you've probably heard that, especially recently, that's, not necessarily the most encouraging thing to say
It's
to someone.
insulting.
Exactly. I can't count how many times that was told to me in the beginning of my career. Like,
and those that say it don't even mentally realize it's an insult. They actually think they're complimenting you. It's not a compliment.
Right. And so, to be honest with you, I didn't even know it was an insult, really. I was trying so hard to be outside of who I was at the time that, I allowed a lot of these things to kind of skate by and just say, oh, I'm going to take that as a compliment and keep moving forward. Right. And so I would say my confidence in myself went completely back to where I was during the high school days of not believing in myself to do what I do, because I was trying to be other people the entire time.
Welcome to the RockstarsRocking podcast, powered by Voluntary Disruption, a show dedicated to people who are crushing their business and life goals. These are bite-sized conversations with leading rock stars in their respective industry who are pumped to share their story to help drive you to the next level. So, are you ready to rock? Speaking of rock stars, here's your host, Eric Silverman.
Hey, rock stars, welcome back to another episode of RockstarsRocking. I'm Eric Silverman, but enough about me. I'm so super fired up to introduce my very special rock star friend, my rock star guest, Ed Ligonde. Ed, what's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going, Eric? Thanks for having me today, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. How bad did I butcher your last name, man?
No, you nailed it. You nailed it. It's always one of those things I'm worried about when you're going through school roll call, but you got it right. You're good.
All right. Score. I love it. Speaking of score, we're going to talk a lot about sports today. Those who aren't already aware of the Ed, let me just tell you a little bit about Ed. Ed is the executive vice president at Nielsen Benefits in the Southern California the greater Los Angeles area. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And I know everybody listening is dying to hear us talk about insurance and employee benefits, but I'm so very sorry. I have no plan to do that today for the most part. Ed, I want to start by talking about a couple things that really are intriguing to me. I'm not a football fan, don't be offended, otherwise known as soccer, but I'm learning to love soccer because my kids love soccer, my wife loves soccer. But you, my friend, you played soccer from early on as a kid all the way into college at UCLA. And I want to talk about that because I am going to live my life vicariously through your story. Only I'm going to imagine myself playing baseball because baseball has always been my sport. So Ed, tell me about your journey to soccer. Were you like my son who's 6 years old and you just started dribbling the ball out back when you were little and then you really liked it? Or how'd that start, man?
It's probably not too atypical from a lot of other kids. My dad was, born and raised playing soccer. It was in his blood. He has 3 other brothers. They all played soccer too. And so I think he was kind of hoping that his son will be able to kind of, basically do what he does and what he loves as well. I actually didn't start until later. A lot of kids start at, 3, 4, 5 years old. And I didn't start, really kicking the ball around and playing until I was about age 9 or so. And to add more to that, I was playing with a bunch of other 10 and 11-year-olds. So not only had they been playing for 5 or 6 years, they were already a year or so older than me at that point in time. So I had a late start, but it was actually a pretty fun start. Got me right into got my boots ready.
So when do you believe you fell in love with it enough to say, hey, I want to do this continuously as I go through high school? And then ultimately it led you into college and you played in college too. Walk us through that if you can.
Funny enough, that's a great question, Eric. I don't actually think I started really falling in love with it until about a year or so before I left for college. So until I was 16, 17 years old. So, I played for a good 7, 8 years and just kind of felt like I was going through the motions and just playing just to play. And it wasn't until I started getting, recruiting messages and things like that from coaches all around the country, and also coaches who really believed in me. My dad was also my number one fan when it came to soccer. Both my parents were, but he grew up playing soccer, so of course he believed that I could do it. But my goal was actually to go to school, get a business degree, and kind of work my way up the ranks that way. Never thought of soccer as an outlet to get out of where I was and use that as a platform to excel. So yeah, I'd say we got a new coach when I was 17 who, I've always had coaches who said great things about me and played me a lot, but this coach came in and put me in my place. And it was eye-opening, but he did it as a way to bring out the best qualities in me, and also bring out some of the leadership skills in myself as well. And so it changed my outlook on the sport in and of itself. And I started falling in love with it. I realized that I was a lot more athletic than I thought I was. He helped me lose 25 pounds in one summer. It was insane. And next thing I knew, I was getting even more and more calls to play in school. So I started changing my mindset on it.
So did you have a moment with all the recruiters calling you and emailing you and trying to get you to go to school for them and play soccer? Did you have a moment where you thought to yourself, geez, I'm pretty good at this. I'm being told I'm pretty good at this. I could potentially be a pro and go overseas and play or play for the US team or what have you?
So what's funny is even though I was starting to get these messages and phone calls, I still didn't really believe in myself, to be honest with you. I saw it as a way to help my parents cover the expenses of college. And even so, even though I was getting these messages, I still didn't want to play college soccer. I was starting to fall in love with the sport, yes, but to use it as my, I was doing really well academically at the time. And so I wanted to kind of go that route. And I know that's pretty atypical for a lot of kids who play sports, but that was the route I wanted to go. And so it wasn't until maybe my sophomore year in college that I realized, okay, well, now I'm in this new level and things seem to be going pretty well. Maybe I should start considering life after college and including soccer in that mix as a career outlet. So at that point in time, it was all very reactive for me. It wasn't very proactive in me trying to see if I could do it. It was waiting to hear what other people thought of me, if that made sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And, it's something you said that really struck me. You said you didn't really believe in yourself with respect to playing college soccer and then ultimately leading into a potential pro career. There's so much to unpack right there. But do you believe that that's something that a lot of high school and collegiate athletes go through as far as the limiting belief, or some might call it the imposter syndrome? Like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here.
Yeah, I think sometimes your biggest enemy is yourself. You just live in here, and I'm still, a victim of that, if you will, just living in your head. And I think it was one particular coach I had right before going into college who said that I needed to walk out on the field like I was the best player on the field, make the first tackle, get the first yellow card, yell at the first player, make them scared of you. And even if you think they are better than you, show them that you're better and that you believe that you are better. And so changing that mindset, having that behavior change is what started allowing me to, do a lot better. And then I started believing in you look good, you play good. So I had my shoes tied right, my socks up right, things of that nature. And of course I went to UCLA. We learned a lot about the John Wooden stories. And one of the first things he taught a lot of the freshmen when they come in is how to tie their shoes. It's something so fundamental and basic, but something that was pivotal in transforming his teams to be as successful as they are. And so, I brought that kind of mindset into soccer as well. And that, I think it took me a little bit of time, but it got me to have that confidence in myself to go out there and do what I do best.
I love that. So what stopped you from continuing on? You just said soccer is not going to work and I just need to go into the sexy world of insurance, or like what happened with the soccer stuff?
I mean, I really wanted to go in insurance since I was a kid, man.
I figured.
Totally kidding, of course. Yeah, that's obviously a loaded situation. It's one of those things where even when I was in school at UCLA and was having a little bit of success there, not as much success as I had wanted to, but some success nonetheless. I had some starting opportunities and things like that. I still was really trying to focus on my academics and get a business degree or economics degree, at least. That's what UCLA had. And one of the things that kind of hamstrung me, and I say that with pun intended, is the fact that I was just injury ridden all the time. It was so frustrating. If it wasn't one thing, it was another. I pulled my hamstring. That takes a few weeks to heal. Then I'd tear my quadricep, and that took months to heal. But I would come back stronger, right? And having the level of therapy, and we're kind of spoiled at UCLA in the therapy that I had a really amazing PT people there as well. But coming back stronger, so my belief was still there, my opportunities were still there, but it wasn't until once I started getting a lot more comfortable with myself and my capabilities and things of that nature, that's when everything kind of came crashing down a little bit. I started getting some nicks and weird feelings in my shins, and one thing led to another. I ended up finding out that I had these pretty, stress fractures don't sound like something that's major. A lot of runners get it, but the way mine were structured, I had 3 in one leg, 5 in another, and there was no sign of them healing, even after taking months and months of time of rest. So I had to get a major surgery done.
Yikes.
So the doctors had to put titanium rods in my legs and said, you got to keep them in forever, because at any point in time you could have a compound fracture. Not to get too graphic, but that could be pretty scary. And so what was so frustrating about that moment in time was that was when I was at the height of, I would say, my soccer career, but at the same time my confidence as well. And I don't want to blur confidence and cockiness. It was never cockiness. It was truly confidence. I was really happy with where I was from a mental perspective. It had taken such a long time to get there, and things were going really well. And that's where some of those international opportunities were actually coming up, even before I even graduated. This opportunity to go to England and try out for some teams, even some of my favorite teams. And so hearing this news was, okay, here's another Nick, but I didn't know what it was going to bring me after that. I started focusing less on the life after school from an academic standpoint and more on soccer. And so because I had gotten to that point in time, I allowed myself I let my guard down, if you will, right? So yeah, had that surgery done, and it took forever to recuperate from that. Basically had to learn how to walk again. I was a 20-year-old kid using a walker going around UCLA campus. It was, wow. It felt
chicks dig walkers.
What's that?
Chicks dig walkers.
Listen, man, I won't say it because my wife's probably listening to this as well, but it got some sympathy points, if you will. But
fair enough. Fair enough.
The experience I didn't want to have at 20 years old.
No doubt. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So before we move on to another couple questions I have, is there a soundbite of sorts, like a quick thing you might be able to say to a high school or college kid that's listening, or better yet, most likely their parent is listening and maybe they would want to share this with their high school, college kid who's heavy into sports of any kind?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what one of my high school coaches shared with me, is that belief that you are the best player on the field or on the court or in the gym or whatever sport you're playing. Having that belief that you are will transform the way you play that day, that moment in time, that in the rest of your season. And again, I don't want to blur it with being cocky. It's not being cocky. It's just having the confidence in your own belief in your own capabilities that will help push that needle and make you a better athlete day in and day out as well. So that was pivotal for me from a mental perspective.
Terrific. I love that. And I believe it myself. Let me ask you a question. So you, we're going to switch gears a little bit. I've known you quite a while. I've been getting to know you more, and I appreciate that. It's great to be a friend of yours. You have, you expressed to me how you didn't grow up early on in the U.S., that you were born in the U.S. and then immediately taken back to your home country. Can you unpack that a little bit for us? Tell us about your upbringing.
Absolutely. My parents are born and raised in Haiti. And so, coming from the Caribbean, and the one thing I'll say is I think one of the reasons why I was so academically focused is because my parents were. They're the first to one of the first to graduate college. They also both individually went and got their master's degrees as well in their individual fields, both very science related. But again, they come from Haiti. They come from very, very, very humble beginnings. I still remember how they would share these stories about, when we lived in Haiti. So essentially, they wanted a better life for us, my sister and I. They wanted a better life for themselves. And so they believed that they hit a little bit of a ceiling in Haiti. So they wanted to have me and not have me go through the entire immigration process. So I was actually born in Florida. But almost immediately after, a couple weeks after, being born, I went back with my mom and we went back to Haiti and lived there. And I actually, funny enough, have some random, memories of, we had a little well in our back area and things like that as well. So I had to wear uniforms to school, and you're not allowed to smile in your Haitian pictures as well. So there's tons of pictures of me as a kid, which is very stone faced. My wife still laughs about it today, but
wow.
But anyways, that's exactly what happened. And then my sister was born about a few years later, about 4.5, 5 years later, came back to the States. And then, I've been back to Haiti since then, but haven't been back permanently, of course. Lived there. And again, academics was key. So my dad actually came out to the West Coast for agriculture. My mom continued her studies as a nurse. We both ended up meeting and settling in Fresno, California, of all places. Tons of agriculture opportunities there, but tons of opportunities from a medical field as well. They both finished their masters. And now my mom's a family nurse practitioner, and my dad's the director of quality assurance at a really large agriculture company. So they've done really well. They've made something out of nothing. So I'm a very proud son over here.
That's awesome, man. That's a really cool story. I love hearing that. And they're still in California, yes?
Yes. So we're only a few hours up the road from us.
Okay, awesome. So let me ask you a question. When it comes to getting into the employee benefits world, I mean, where does that even come from, man? Like, I know my story. I'm not going to share it today, but my goodness, I mean, soccer and family, and all of a sudden you just wake up and say, soccer's out, but I'm going to sell insurance. Like, what the heck?
So at UCLA, they didn't have, a business program. It was an economics program, right? And so I did economics and sociology. Those were essentially my majors, if you will. Mm-hmm. I was able to land a really nice internship with Northwestern Mutual. Okay. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what doing business meant at the time. I was 20 years old and thinking to myself, I want to be in business. I want to wear a suit and go to work every day. And my parents were kind of hoping the same for me, just kind of work my way up and get better salaries going on and forward. That's kind of to a degree, that immigrant kind of mindset. Just get your degree, maybe get your master's as well, and work your way up the totem pole. The insurance play came in because when I landed at that opportunity at Northwestern Mutual, I didn't realize how insurance-based it was. And so one of the first things I had to do was get my insurance license, my life and health license. Ultimately, it's your first step into becoming a financial advisor. Again, while I come from a little, humble beginnings, I also come from a very, 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 very shy family. And so as such, having to ask friends and family and referrals and things of that nature for, to spend all their money on life insurance with me while I'm this kid who's still in college, who has dreadlocks, by the way, in the downturn of the economy in 2008.
I need that picture.
Yeah, it was basically just set up to fail. Now, I wouldn't say that I necessarily failed. It was just tough for me to live in this 100% commission world during such a bad time in the economy, of course. And of course, I didn't look the part, physically as well. And so I started getting to the point where I said, I think I need a little bit of a career transition. Because of the surgery I had, a couple years prior, I was super interested in the medical world, but trying to see if there was a way to marry business and the medical world. And so I really wanted to go into medical device sales. I can get that medical kind of interest in education, but also have that business aspect of it as well. And that can also be a lucrative career. But you needed business to business sales experience. And I had business to consumer. And so I needed a bit of a bridge. And so I was thinking about going to work for the ADPs and the Paychexes of the world. But I had a good friend who said, hey, you already have your life and health license. Instead of going after your friends and asking them for life insurance. Why don't you try the employer side? That way you get that business to business sales experience. We need a new sales guy anyways. And why don't you just try that out? And if it doesn't work, then at least you get your experience. So that is how I landed in the benefits world back in 2009 or so.
It's a total accident.
Total accident. Yeah.
So, and I hear that quite often. My story is very similar in some respect. Let's go back to something you said, though, which I find very interesting, because ultimately it's so very true. And I want to unpack it a little bit, if you don't mind. You mentioned that you went into the insurance employee benefits world, but you didn't, quote unquote, look the part. I got to imagine you're talking about, and I'll give her a shout out because I learned the saying from my good friend Susan Combs, past Benefits Pro cover model, broker of the year from a few years ago. She's a rock star. If you don't know her, I'll introduce you. But she always says that the industry that we're both in, employee benefits and insurance, is quote unquote pale, stale, and male. And you definitely were speaking about at least one of those just a moment ago. Can you unpack what that's been like to be, pardon me, but a black man in a white dominated industry, particularly of men?
Yeah. I mean, I learned quickly how the insurance world, if you looked at a lot of the people in the insurance world and kind of looked at all the pictures there, they looked very similar to our line of presidents, right? And, I wasn't unfamiliar with working in a world or being in a world where I was the minority. When we lived in Fresno, I transferred over to a school where I think there was, 3,000 or 4,000 students, so a good student body for Black people, right? And a very small, Asian population, very small, other people of color population. So I was actually uncomfortable, believe it or not, when I was around a lot of people that looked like me. I got so used to being the minority. I know it's a bit of a weird kind of paradigm there, but so I was actually, to a degree, kind of comfortable when I was the minority. I was used to having eyes on me. But I think at the same time, it hamstrung me because it didn't allow me to realize that I had a lot of missed opportunities because of that. There were several times, in fact, I'll even add, I'm actually married to a white female, and we have mixed children. And we, even still to this day, we will be out on the street and get looks. And, we're still in a society that isn't fully capable of understanding and accepting the differences in who we are and things of that nature. And so it's a bummer, of course, but, I think we are still making strides forward and pushing forward. And so, going back to the whole insurance world aspect, I know that I had to be different. And I was trying so hard in the beginning to try to look the part. Of course, I can't look like my counterparts, but I needed to find a way to do better. I had to be better than myself in order to even be considered. And here's what I mean. I had to cut my dreadlocks off, of course, so the dreadlocks are gone, get cleaned up, look clean as well, make sure that I was as well-spoken as possible, because there's always this stereotype of, oh, you speak well. And that's, you've probably heard that, especially recently, that's, not necessarily the most encouraging thing to say to someone. It's
insulting.
Exactly. I can't count how many times that was told to me in the beginning of my career. Like,
and those that say it don't even mentally realize it's an insult. They actually think they're complimenting you. It's not a compliment.
Right. And so, to be honest with you, I didn't even know it was an insult, really. I was trying so hard to be outside of who I was at the time that, I allowed a lot of these things to kind of skate by and just say, oh, I'm going to take that as a compliment and keep moving forward. Right. And so I would say my confidence in myself went completely back to where I was during the high school days of not believing in myself to do what I do, because I was trying to be other people the entire time. So yeah, it was a definite, paradigm and struggle that I had in the beginning of my career. Couple that with being a shy person as well in sales, right? So I'm a shy Black man in a pale, stale, and male industry.
It's the trifecta.
Yeah, exactly.
So, look, and I imagine you would agree with this, but I'm a big believer that love doesn't see color and it doesn't see gender either. And there's so much to unpack with that statement. We're not going to get to it, but based on everything you just described, I got to imagine you believe that. And I do believe we're moving very slowly but surely to a better world for our kids. But at the same token, change doesn't happen fast, man. It just doesn't. I wish it did, but it doesn't.
I think that's a great point. And, I think bias exists in all of us in some way, shape, or form, right? And, I agree with you. I think it's slow. It's happening, but very, very slow, and maybe not as fast as a lot of us would like. So I try to take the positive, the silver linings in it when I can. But I think a lot of times, though, if we believe it, then I think we need to exude it. And what I mean is being intentional in that love, right? And being intentional in giving people of color or people of different genders and things of that nature the opportunities that they might not normally be afforded, right? And so I was fortunately able to have that opportunity. And even when I transitioned over to Nielsen several years ago, I mean, I don't know, I never saw myself ever being an executive vice president at a consulting firm before, especially looking the way I did at the time and things of that nature as well, right? So, I agree with you in the sense that love doesn't see color. I think, sometimes I do challenge that saying, because I think love should see color, because we should be able to accept our differences and love our differences as well, if you will, but also give opportunities and create those opportunities, especially if you happen to be in a place of privilege, to give that opportunity to someone that may not be afforded that opportunity.
Yeah, and I really just believe that you can't really pick or choose what you fall in love with, industry wise, passion wise, project wise, nor can you pick who you fall in love with as far as who they are, where they're from, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just something I believe personally, and unfortunately, not everybody believes that. But that's what makes the world go around. Everybody's got an opinion. And it's just one of those things. I think it is what it is for now. But again, continuing to progress, or continuing to push change for progress is important. So as we start to wrap up, I wanted to unpack a couple more things. And I did want to actually talk about benefits for just a half a minute. Don't hang up the podcast. This actually applies to everything, not just the insurance business, but in the insurance and employee benefits industry. Do you believe that there's innovation out there that still has not even been discovered yet? And I'm not just talking about technology. It could be anything. But, a lot of people would imagine insurance and employee benefits is that boring old thing. I make fun of it all the time, and I do it for a living. But is innovation out there when it comes to employee benefits, technology, and insurance, in your opinion?
Absolutely. I think that's in all industries. I don't even think it's, like you mentioned, it's just in benefits or in technology. I think it's in all industries. I love to see it. I mean, I'm a little bit of a space geek as well, funny enough, and just seeing the Mars rover land on a planet millions and millions of miles away, the fact that we can do that is mind-blowing to me. So can we have innovation in the benefits industry? 100%. There's already innovation now in and of itself. The one thing, though, I think that this industry needs is that embracing. We just talked about it from a racial and gender equality perspective, and being acceptable and understanding and loving differences. And I think we also need that kind of same mindset to accept and understand, or at least want to be educated on what else is out there from an engagement, from a benefit perspective, from a healthcare spend perspective as well. You can't continually keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? I mean, we've all talked about that in various worlds, and that's kind of how this healthcare industry has gotten to where it's at now, where it's become such a political decision and things of that nature. So I think if we're a lot more open to differences and pushing that curve down as much as possible, then I think we're in for a real treat when it comes to healthcare.
So let me ask you this, as a firm, yourself included, are you guys progressive when it comes to change with respect to, would you agree or disagree to the statement, as a firm, we are open to new ideas and new, not just technology, but new products and services and carriers and things that can ultimately better your employer group clients that transcend down to the end user, who in the employer benefit world is the actual consumer of the healthcare, which is the employee.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And I mean that educationally, financially, growth wise, whatever it is, whatever platform you're considering. If you're not growing, you're dying. And so I embrace new ideas and new strategies and new partners and things of that nature, because I mean, think about it, right? I'm also a big believer in sharing knowledge. If Eric, if you're sharing something with me, a new idea, and you've already taught me so much, I'm going to share that with my clients. My clients become the beneficiaries of that, right? And their employees as such become beneficiaries of it too, which then increases my value selfishly to the client, but then maybe builds an even better relationship with you and I, or any other partner we might be working with. And again, that's what I mean by embracing differences and things of that nature too. We're always going to be open to new ideas and learning about them and things like that. You can't jam a square peg into a round hole, of course, but you're not going to know what's out there. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so if you're willing to understand and learn and reach out and continually stay humble and hungry, you're going to create a lot of positive ripple effects.
Yeah, no, I love how you say that. And, it's interesting because, I'm sitting here talking to a guy who describes himself and his family as shy, but yet a lot of folks don't realize, and you can obviously see Ed's a talker, which is fantastic. He's a sales guy, just like me. But, Ed was actually, to give him credit here, man, he was the cover model of the 2019 Employee Benefit Advisor magazine as the 2019 rising star of all the 20-something folks they highlighted in the magazine that all got a little baby tiny square picture in the magazine. Ed got the cover and was the centerfold of that. And that is literally one of the most prestigious industry trade publications that the employee benefits industry has. So I don't know about I don't know how he can describe himself as shy, but maybe we'll leave that to another day. But congratulations on that honor. Something I certainly can't say I have. And trust me, nobody wants to see me on the cover of any magazine. I would love to see it, but nobody else wants to see it. I promise you. Ed, before we wrap up, let me ask you, what's one thing that most people probably don't know about you that you could share that would be interesting?
Probably the fact that I played piano up until college.
Whoa, you tickled those ivories, the keys. I can't do that.
Yeah, they did. My parents got me into it when I was really young, my sister and I, and they said that it was also a great way to learn math. And so that's why math was one of my favorite subjects growing up. But I ended up falling in love with the piano. Had a great time with it, had really great instructors as well. So I give a lot of credit to the instructors I had. But unfortunately, I stopped right before college because of a recital, actually. And so I actually never turned back. Every now and then I can hit the keys again when I'm at home and see my parents, but I haven't gone back and really tickled those ivories, if you will, since then.
You stopped because of a recital? What do you mean? You just didn't want to do the recital? Like you just gave up? That doesn't sound like you.
Yeah, you're right. It was a defining moment. Essentially what happened was there was a recital where there's 20 other students who were performing for their families and friends and a couple hundred people. And it was something I had done for years. This was nothing different. Everyone usually brings their sheet music with them. Well, I had at the time really good memory with my sheet music, so I never brought it for years. It was not anything outside of the norm for me not to bring my sheet music. But what I typically do right before I go up on stage is I practice the song in my head, sitting at my seat. And I cannot remember I couldn't even remember how to start. I couldn't remember the first note. I couldn't remember the melody.
You just went blank
of the song. It's literally like someone plucked all of that song completely out of my brain.
It's like the movie Men in Black. Did they put one of those silver things in front of you and it took your memory away? Like Will Smith showed up?
That's exactly how it felt. And so I get up on stage and I'm sitting in front of the piano and I'm kind of just lightly touching the keys. And unfortunately, there's a microphone there, so everyone can hear me kind of playing with the piano. And I am also the oldest, so everyone expects the most from me there, by the way.
Sure.
And so I'm starting to sweat, and this is what I do when I get nervous. I start sweating like crazy. My teacher comes up asking me, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "I can't remember the music." And she said, "Did you bring it?" I said, "No." She couldn't remember the song either. And so I was about to leave. And I actually remembered the first note. So I touched the first note, and then the first half of the song came back to me. And so I get up and I do the first 5 notes and completely bomb it. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I'm about to get up again. I said, let me try one more time. And I sit down, and I actually did it better than I did in practice at home with my teachers. I to be honest with you, I kind of crushed it. But when I actually got a standing ovation after, and I literally walked straight outside.
And then you never went back.
Never went back.
Well, you went out on top. You got a standing O, and you just said it was a defining moment in your piano playing career because you crushed it better than any other time. So listen, Ed, we appreciate you coming on. How can people reach you, my friend?
So many different ways. Instagram, at Wiggy is my handle there. LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn, Ed Ligonde. You can also, email me, ed@nielsenbenefits.com. You can find me on the website as well. So, or through you, Eric.
Awesome. Well, of course, we're going to have all your contact info in the show notes. If anybody's interested in talking to Ed, or if you have a question or a comment, please go ahead and leave that in the comment section. If you happen to see this clip or one of these clips on any of the various social media platforms that we are on, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts and leave a review. 5 stars would totally rock. I'm Eric Silverman, and for everybody behind the scenes here at the RockstarsRocking podcast, I sincerely appreciate you listening and watching. If you're watching our YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe there too. That is my good friend Ed Ligonde, at Executive Vice President at Nielsen Benefits in the greater Los Angeles area. And this has been another Rockstar episode of Rockstars Rocking, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Rockstars Rocking podcast. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. 5 stars would totally rock. Until next time, Rockstars, keep rocking.